Happy Friday afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the MSP Cyber Roundtable. Today, we're really excited to be welcoming Robert and Bianca from Nine Minds for a conversation around how service providers can use generative AI in their business. How are you guys doing? Matt, you're going to see the eclipse. It's Friday. Does anybody have anything they're excited to start with while my cat shows off for everybody?
That's pretty cool, going to see the eclipse.
Yeah, so I did the last one back in 2017, and I drove down to Tennessee with met actually Danny, one of our engineers, halfway down because he was in West Virginia. Then got in with his crew and my crew, and there was like 8 kids and 3 adults in a van, and we rode on down there, and then the storm clouds were coming in, and we had to like chase in front of the storm, and we made it out into the line in Tennessee, and it was a pretty great experience. And then we had like 18 hours of traffic to get back, but before not even the drive back to New York, just the traffic was pretty intense.
Oh, wow. I guess that would be how it would be.
So because everyone gets there over a period of like 36 hours, but they all leave at the exact same moment. So this year the eclipse is in range of New York City, and then it's going swooping down into Mexico through Texas, right? But I'm up in New York, right, in upstate, and there's a huge couple metro markets that are all like going to be driving up. So what I did this year that was different is I just booked a few days to pad up on the other side of the Canadian border, so I don't have to deal with traffic at all.
You do get to deal with some snow, though.
I do get to deal with
snow.
It just snowed, and this was like I thought we had the last one a few weeks ago, but it just snowed again. But up there, it snowed like a foot or two.
Oh, God. Would you rather have 4 hours of blocked traffic or 10 inches of snow to deal with?
Oh, I'd take the snow any day.
I haven't seen snow in a decade.
Oh, I guess
where are you at, Robert?
We're in Clearwater, Florida.
Florida,
yeah.
There's when snow happens there, it's like it's a bad day.
I don't know. It's might be the end of the world.
Well, I would love to do some introductions from you guys. Do either of you prefer to start?
I can start if you'd like, Bianca. So I'm Robert Isaacs, and I'm the CEO of Nine Minds. We are a company that uses AI to help MSPs with service ticketing.
And tell me a little bit about your career journey, Robert.
Sure. So my background is I was the chief software architect at ConnectWise for close to 20 years. And so I saw ConnectWise grow from 15 employees when I started to 1,500 employees. And so I got a front row seat at the kind of rise of the MSP as a business strategy, and the kind of the tool vendor space and the unique needs of MSPs throughout the 2000s and through the rise of the internet and mobile phones.
I don't know if I really like how you said 2000s there, because those felt like just yesterday for me.
It was. I know.
A long time ago.
Back when Bianca was born.
I was born in 2000, so I barely made it.
Okay, great. Robert, what motivated you to get into software engineering? Because you've been in the game for a long time, and I'm sure a lot of people that are tertiary to the space see AI as kind of the pinnacle of what you can be doing right now in terms of development and coding. Maybe I'm wrong, and Matt can slap my hand. But that's at least my obscure view on things. So how did you start, and then how did you get to AI?
So I'm one of those strange people who is born knowing exactly what they wanted to do. So it's always been about coding for me. I remember when I was in 3rd grade, kind of figuring out the first time how to do like a loop in BASIC. And I remember running back to my room and saying, oh, I was kind of blown away by software engineering. So I don't remember a time before I wanted to be involved in software, and kind of as far as the pinnacle, some developers would be like, well, it's like writing an operating system or doing something really low level is the pinnacle. But I grew up reading Asimov's robot books and kind of just thinking about this forever. And it's just kind of amazing that we're kind of going to experience the beginnings of this AI revolution.
Yeah. So Asimov coined the 3 laws,
Yeah.
right? And they were good laws. It seems like the industry isn't quite. It seems like those 3 things. It seems like things people could get behind.
Well, say the
right?
laws. Don't call them things.
Oh, I don't
laws.
know. I gotta pull them up here.
No, I can say them.
You got them. You got them memorized.
Yeah. So the first law is that a robot will not injure a person, or through inaction allow them to come to harm. The second one is a robot has to follow the commands of a human, except where it conflicts with the first law. And the third one is the robot has to protect itself, except where the protection conflicts with the second or first laws. So his books are all about kind of the different conflicts that arise, with these robots that have to navigate the world. It would be nice if we could build that into the software. There was one other one. I don't know if you ever saw the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still. And
I don't remember.
That was a completely different way of handling AI safety. It was basically they had this gigantic robot, and in any conflict, whoever was the one who started it, the robot would destroy. So everyone was kind of frozen in place and unable to.
Yeah.
It's kind of terrifying.
Well, I can't wait to get into the second half after our lecture, because I know we're going to have a lot of depth there with the AI conversations. Robert, we're really excited to have you. What's your favorite dessert?
Oh man, I like sweets.
Yeah.
So I like jelly beans.
Easter?
Yeah,
Jelly beans?
I can eat jelly beans all day long.
Okay. What's your favorite jelly bean?
Yeah, exactly.
I actually like the kinds of candy that no one else does because I get more of them. So I like the black licorice jelly beans.
Oh, God.
And
I'm into licorice.
Yeah.
Black licorice?
Stay on other sides of the country, I guess.
Well, no,
you can have all of mine.
Specifically the fennel flavor, really. Like, I'm into. But I like the jelly beans that look like rocks.
Oh, those are good. Yeah, those are good.
All right. Does anyone else have a favorite jelly bean?
Bianca, I think you're up.
Yeah.
Tell us all a little bit about you.
Yeah, so my name's Bianca, and I'm the marketing generalist here at Nine Minds. Basically, anything you see online about Nine Minds, that's probably me behind it.
Yeah.
So if anyone has any questions about us and about what we do, definitely feel free to contact me, connect with me on LinkedIn after, and I can guide you in the right direction.
So if I was sitting at home and I didn't know as much as I know about marketing, which maybe isn't very much, but it is as much as I know, I might think to myself, it's probably easy to market AI because it's this like hot thing that everybody needs. Tell me about that experience. Is that true? How's it been for you being in that space and focusing on something so on the pinnacle right now?
Yeah. The great thing about AI is that it has a lot of innovative things about it, and it kind of creates content for itself. You can use it, and you can really get a lot out of it. And it's super awesome to work with AI, and it's really exciting to see what it does. And it's really kind of easy to incorporate trends into what you do with AI, because you can use AI, you can, go to ChatGPT and you can type in some things, and you can generate content for yourself too. It's really helpful for a lot of things. So it's been super awesome working with AI.
When you were learning about marketing, did you know that you were going to be in the AI space?
I didn't at first, but I've always been into technology, and I think once ChatGPT came out and all these AI things started happening, it definitely caught my interest. And I never thought I would work in marketing with AI, but when I found this job, I was like, this is pretty awesome. Like the company's super innovative, and it's very different. It's something I've never really worked with before. So it's been different, but very exciting for sure.
Well, awesome. What's your favorite appetizer? You thought I was going to ask you about a dessert.
Appetizer?
Caught you off guard. See that?
I'd say probably vegetables and hummus. I'm a big
Okay.
vegetable girl.
Do you have a type of hummus you prefer or the classic?
I like classic, but I also like the red pepper one.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
a garlic guy.
What
Oh,
what
garlic.
about what about hummus on one side of the plate and baba ganoush on the other side? Is
I've
that
never had a baba ganoush.
I've actually never had baba ganoush.
Oh,
What is
okay.
that?
No, no.
Put it on the list. Put it on the list.
All right. We'll add it to the list as we transition on over to a lecture. I'm really looking forward to our topic, and thank you guys for your introductions.
Thank you.
All right. I'm less excited about this than I am about food, Zach, but let's do it. So we're talking about NIST CSF today. I want to back up, and for any of our viewers that have been watching the last couple months, we have covered a bunch of NIST CSF, but we dove down deep into the domain areas and the functional areas to really highlight the differences since the last version of NIST CSF that came out. Uh, Seemed like 10 years ago now. But in any case, we've been sitting on 1.1 for many years. 2.0 is out now. Now, NIST CSF, there's a little bit confusion out there in the industry. Yes, it's a security standard. Stands for NIST Cybersecurity Framework. NIST is, of course, the technology arm of the U.S. Department of Commerce, and they do a lot of standards. But NIST has actually a lot of cybersecurity standards, and some people may not realize this. They have comprehensive, deep technical standards, and this is not one of them. Specifically about cybersecurity, they go deep in some of their standards, like NIST 853. They also maintain some government contractor security standards, like NIST 800-171. They've got an auditing guidebook under a NIST 830. They've even got some AI security standards, in addition to
Really?
many others. Okay, so
What are those?
because
look
they
like?
well, we should do that. We should go through the NIST AI security framework in an upcoming show. But
Okay.
it's ultimately a list of, if you're developing AI for people like Robert, here are some things you might want to be thinking about when you build that AI application to
Yeah.
keep it safe for the world, right?
Yeah.
So, in any case, NIST CSF's design goal was, because of all of those other standards and how complicated they are, to build something that was a little bit easier to access. And it's simpler than some of those very comprehensive standards, but it is quite detailed. It is NIST CSF's particularly popular, actually, even though it's coming from a federal agency. It's not really used by the federal government. It's not really used by federal contractors. It gets used a lot in state governments. In the U.S., state governments don't really have the resources to start a cybersecurity standard um, research planning, standardization process on their own. In addition to that, it doesn't make sense to invent that 50 times in this this nation. That said, this is not just a U.S. standard. Actually, when NIST was developing version 2 of this standard, they actually consulted with dozens of countries all over the world, because NIST CSF, the original version 1, was adopted all over the world, and they really wanted to take into consideration the needs of all those other partners. We just all live in one big planet. So NIST CSF is an international standard. It's in public domain, and that's it's one of the few international standards it's in public domain. That is, there's no copyright on this. Anyone can take the NIST CSF content, do anything they want with it. So with that, let's talk about some of the specifics. So NIST breaks down the whole world of cybersecurity into functions. New for version 2, which came out just a handful of weeks ago, is the govern function. So identify, protect, detect, respond, recover are all pretty technical. Govern, while it is somewhat technical, is all about how do you make all those things happen, right? How do you decide which things you need? How do you see if they're working or not? How do you plan your way through implementations? How do you fix things in your security framework when they're not working the way that they should, or your security architecture? So that's what govern's all about. Risk management, risk assessments in there, deciding which controls you should use and not use. That's all new to NIST version 2. And they really just decided that the rest of those functions really could not operate without a strong govern function. And by the way, that's where Fort Mesa lives. We're in the land of governance. So that's the govern function. Identify is all about finding and identifying the problem space. So where are all your assets? Are there problems with those assets? Is there value with those assets? Like, do they have things that are valuable in them? If those assets break, is that going to create a problem, right? And by assets, we mean devices, we mean pieces of software, we mean data, we might mean third-party vendors, we might even mean people are all cybersecurity assets. And phew, I just breezed through a couple functions here. What questions do you guys have about govern and identify before I breeze on through the rest of them? Is anyone familiar with these?
No, I think we covered all these in pretty intense detail over the past maybe not most recent few weeks, but over
Sure.
within the past couple months. So
And,
I think you probably keep rocking.
and any of our viewers that want to sort of rewind, it's the last, it's basically since the new year that we went through these. You can go back and look. Protect is, of course, what can you do to protect those assets before an attacker gets in there, to stop an attacker from getting in there, into those assets, into creating losses in those assets. So what can you do to protect a bad thing from happening? And so it's a lot of hygiene stuff, guys. It's lock your windows and doors, right?
Hide your kids,
now,
hide your wives.
Protection, yeah. Protection's not perfect. It's never perfect. There's no such thing as being 100% protected. It's just not possible. And so that leads us into the next function, which is detect, which makes the presumption that we've done all the protection we can do, but it's never going to be 100% effective. And I want to say it like that because there's a lot of emphasis in our industry segment on detection, not necessarily as much emphasis on protection and respond. I think we spend a lot of work on detection, and protect, detect, and respond all work together in a chain. So the reason why protect should be first is it's the cheapest way to keep the attackers out. It is always, always, always going to be cheaper to check the box that says lock the window than it is going to be to chase down an attacker who's crawled under your bed. Okay, so protect should always be first. These analogies are going too far, huh?
That's for sure.
I'm a visual learner, so I'm seeing him scramble in my mind, watching you reach for his foot.
So always do protect first. And by the way, you can't do protect unless you've identified first, because if you don't know what your assets are, you can't protect them. But once you know what they are, protect them. Presume you're not going to protect them 100% of the time. So detect when someone could be creating a loss. And when I say a loss, I mean some damage to your assets. And it's everything from brand goodwill to someone ran off with the data, or someone destroyed the data, or someone monkeyed with the data and it no longer means what it used to mean.
I imagine that you guys at Nine Minds are very thoughtful of a number of different things in relationship to your customers' data, but also your own IP. I imagine that IP is valuable, tremendously valuable.
Yeah, a lot of what we think about is, how do you train the models and make them useful without giving them information that may be confidential for someone, because they tend to regurgitate information. So,
That's really interesting.
and in addition to that, kind of a lot of what we want to do is to read the information that an MSP has on hand, and you have to keep that all secure and safe.
Interesting.
So,
Respond.
if you've detected an issue, right? And the reality is when you've detected an issue, because if all you viewers are not detecting issues, you're not doing detection right.
What's an issue?
It could be anything. It could be anything from a user got locked out of their desktop because they forgot their password, right? But you may want to detect that situation, right?
Yep.
To the thieves ran off with the jewels, right? And there's a lot of things that happen in a service provider world where they think, oh, this is an innocuous incident, right? Or an innocuous event. But those are all detections. When a server runs out of CPU, memory, or disk, that is something you should be able to detect. When an attacker is on a machine and they've inserted some payload that's dangerous, that is something you should be able to detect, right? When it seems like 20 minutes ago, your CEO, who you just passed in the hallway, logged in from China on the other side of the planet, right? Which is an impossible situation.
That boy's fast.
That should be something that you should be able to detect, right? So those are things you should be detecting, anomalies, right? And then you should have a response. And I think there's a heavy emphasis in our field to automate detection and to outsource detection. And I think that's healthy to do to some extent, as long as you're careful about what you're detecting and making sure that it's working effectively when you outsource that to a product, an outside team. There's also an overemphasis to do the next thing, which is to outsource the response. And it's my opinion that our industry doesn't do enough internal response. I think it's really important, if you have an outside source vendor that's raising their hand and says, we found an issue, that you as the service provider are responding quickly, repeatedly, with a process. You're making your decisions in an intelligent way. You're managing risk the way you should, and you're proving it, right? That's what response is about. And not all of those events, those security events that are a little bit painful, are incidents. And some people label incidents differently. The reality is every service provider needs to decide what an incident is. But when you respond to those things, you should be doing it in a repeatable way. And if as the service provider you're thinking, well, I haven't responded to an incident this year, you may be defining incidents wrong. These are muscles you should be working out on a regular basis to be a great incident athlete, right? Or an event handler athlete.
For the sake of having enough time for us to go through a really great AI conversation, I'm going to recommend, if anybody wants to dive further into incidents, they go through our recent pod with Cam from Alert Ops. But let's touch on Recover really quickly, and then let's give Robert and Bianca the wheel here.
Sure. And Recovers, people sometimes blur Respond and Recover because it's sometimes unclear where one begins and ends. But Respond is how you react to those events or incidents, right? Immediately, right? Recover is how you get back to where you were before there was an incident, right? So if lightning burns down your data center, right, you're going to respond by hopefully you guys all have like active hot sites, right? You're going to move over to that backup data center.
It's a hot site at the moment too. Not in the way you wish it was, but it's hot.
But at some point you have to say to yourself, well, our primary data center has got to get rebuilt, whatever. That's what we mean by recover. It's how you get back to where you were. So that's it, guys. This is the overview. And by the way, whether you are in NIST or any other framework, all these same functions apply. I'm going to spend one more minute to just point out the NIST implementation tiers. Similar to how CIS has implementation group levels, NIST does have this concept of implementation tiers in terms of things that are sort of higher maturity, things that are lower maturity. And if you want to learn more about that, you can reach out to us or dig into the NIST documentation. So that's it for NIST CSF, guys. Unless you guys got a CSF question.
I was going to say, I like the diagram on the left where the governance portion goes all the way around in a circle. When I was looking at the table, I was like, that looks like that's, that applies.
Oh, it's wraparound. That's for sure. It's what ties it together.
Yep, for sure.
All right. Well, I'm going to get the slides out of here. So we're having Service Provider Generative AI Day, which is exciting for me because I know many of our partners are excited about this thing. There's a lot of energy in the industry right now. So what is the state of the industry?
The state of the industry. Well, it's using generative AI for these tasks is just kind of nascent, and I think there's a lot of kind of initial best practices that are starting to organically happen over the span of weeks, not years and years, as is the case in older technologies. But so what we're trying to do is we're trying to take the data that these MSPs have. Like every MSP out there is kind of sitting on a gold mine of data. We've all heard that before. The service ticket history, the knowledge base, the wikis that they have, the documentation that they have, the best practices in the company. And the idea is, how do you take the person that's been working with you from the very beginning? A lot of MSPs have the guy that's been around for 10 or 15 years who knows everything about everything. How do you take that person and that knowledge and make it available to everyone who works in your MSP? And how do you have some incident that happens today and one engineer solves that incident? If it happens again and another engineer sees it, how can you make sure that they're going to get all of the learnings that happen constantly in real time? And so AI is a way for us to take all this data, bring it together, apply creativity to it, and try to present it back, and not have it siloed away in databases or wikis that no one reads forever. So that's really the dream of using this technology in a service provider space. It's to take all that data and apply creativity to it.
What is generative AI versus other types of AI, and what are the different types of AI?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, the generative AI using so-called large language models to create content. There's other types of generative AI as well, our stable diffusion models and things like that. But from the context of large language models, essentially what we do is we take a large corpus of information, which essentially that's the internet. It's everything you've ever read, everything you've seen, every Wikipedia article, as much data as you can get your hands on, and you kind of just feed it through the model. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to teach the model to predict the next word. That's as simple as that. And in order to predict the next word, you really have to know everything. So if the next word of a description of physics, in order to predict what the next word is, you really have to have some understanding of physical processes, software development. You're not going to be able to write a working program if you don't have some knowledge of how programming works. So all that information is in these large language models. And that's why we call them generative models, because what they're doing is they're generating the next token. They're generating content. Now, previously to this, most AI was revolved around prediction, right? So you would feed some information in and the model would predict or kind of decide or classify that information. It would try to tell you what the time series was going to look like, next week versus this week, or it was trying to predict what would happen with stock prices or anything that you could kind of imagine you might want a prediction for. Whereas, in these new models, AI starts to talk to us. This is really interesting.
Matt, I'm going to leave the next question to you because that the depth there is a lot.
It's really interesting to me as the large language model space moves forward. When people started creating these models, they really didn't know if they were going to work or how they were going to work, right? And the magic is that they're self-organizing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole secondary like area of AI research that after you have a working model that is predicting sort of effectively with a high effectiveness is trying to even understand how it's working. And they're
Right.
going in there and they have no idea how it's working. And they're going in there and they're tracing it the same way they would trace biology, like with illuminating dye in biology, right? With microscopes, they're like tracking the decision making through the AI models. And what you find is that the AI models actually understand this stuff more than you might expect, So the prediction is not, yes, it's prediction. Yes, it's trying to guess what the next word is, but it actually builds an understanding of, you were talking about physical processes, right? The area of the AI brain that understands, for example, Microsoft SQL might be organized entirely differently from the area of the AI brain that like has to do with something on user desktops, right? And I'm super curious, as you're feeding knowledge about technology into a large language model, um, how does it work inside? And I'm curious, do you even know?
Yeah. So it's you have to think in analogies with these things because kind of like biological brains, these software brains are just too difficult to understand in a way that makes sense for humans. But I always think of things in terms of like context space or concept space. Imagine there's a space where different colors are grouped together closely, and other concepts are really far apart. And that's really how the model understands how concepts are related. It basically maps them onto this really super high dimensional space, which you can't really kind of visualize it because it's something like 1,000 dimensional space, which doesn't. If you can visualize it, that's pretty impressive. But that's really how these models understand the world, which is there may be 1,000 different properties that make things similar or different from each other, and they kind of keep it all together all at once. So when you ask it about something, it kind of figures out where in space those
It literally
concepts.
holds the whole thought and just like pulls out where the information is.
Yeah, and to your point where you were saying that there's a place for the software engineer AI and a place for the physics AI. They're really kind of malleable. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the concept of prompt engineering, but a lot of
Mm-hmm.
what that is
Recently.
you're just telling the model who to be, right? Because it can be anyone. It can be a child or an
The
adult
more
or
specific you are, the better it's going to be able to.
yeah. Yeah. You say, I want you to be the expert MSP engineer working on service tickets. And that's your persona for the purposes of answering these questions for us.
Versus a group of high school kids or the collective whole of whatever data set is in there, right?
Right.
So this is I have conflicts about this. I'm going to get philosophical for a moment, okay? So
Perfect.
on the one hand, I don't want AI to take over the world. On the other hand, so that's the simple version. On the other hand, I'm a reluctant programmer. Zach, you may not know this about me. I spent years programming. I hate it. I like talking to people. This interaction's great for me. I know 20 programming languages. I hate them all. And the idea that I can just talk to a computer the way I can talk to another human, that feels good to me and feels humanizing. So I'm feeling good about this direction, right? As long as we get those three laws in there, I'm feeling
Yeah,
good.
as it turns out, it's really difficult and expensive to make these things. So in the old days,
Yeah.
10 years ago, there was this debate about whether, if there was ever an AI that came about, would it be kind of a fast takeoff where, you know, it self improves and becomes this really
Like a snowball rolling down a
yeah
really neat hill.
yeah, like an instant, just you go from just a simple AI to just this very superhuman AI. I
Yeah.
mean, you can imagine that if there's like this self-improving process and it's happening very, very quickly. But it turns out it takes entire data centers and thousands and thousands and thousands of GPUs months to create one of these language models. So we kind of get out of them what we put into them.
Yeah.
We put these enormous resources into it.
It's really interesting to hear you say that. I have very limited experience with AI, from a hands-on perspective, in terms of like trying to get it to do highly creative things. Um, Even just running into the scope, of recognizing how deep it's programmed to even consider what you're asking it is a really interesting thing, that is also resource based, right? Because everything has a depth, beyond what necessarily I'm going to use words that are probably wrong here, but what the memory of that AI in that space is. Things just have more depth in general. Um, with that in mind, it almost has whatever would be considered the opposite of a glass ceiling. It's like the physical. There's like a really really dense physical ceiling of what it's capable of based on resourcing.
Yeah, it's all sorts of resources. It's the compute that you have to spend to train it. It's the hardware that you have to purchase to run it.
Yeah.
And then there's the amount of time that you have to take, and the electricity, and the carbon offsets, and everything that you need to do in order to create one of these models. But there's a very predictable kind of graph of time, compute, and the size of the model and its capabilities. So if you say I need something that is highly capable, a world-class model, we basically know you have to have this much compute, you have to train it for this long, but most tasks aren't that. So a lot of what AI is, and a lot of what we do here, is we just determine, where's the sweet spot, the amount of capability, the knowledge, that we need to do to solve problems
To
for
solve the
our
problem you're
customers.
solving for,
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
same way you would prompt it to be in a way that you would solve for. This is really interesting. Matt, forgive me. I'm going to steal another question here because, we've asked a lot of things that aren't specific to the MSP, and I want to make sure, that our MSP partners have a chance to glean some value for themselves, other than just me being enamored in the interest of the whole topic. So, if you're an MSP, let me make sure that I get my full question here. I wrote to myself. What types of data sets would be interesting for an MSP to group together for themselves, and what ways could it be potentially, valuable for them to utilize it outside of the way that you guys already specialize in?
Well, it's everything really. So our specialization is in the service ticketing right now, but you can imagine that anything that you produce at an MSP um, could benefit from some automation, right? So it could be the marketing materials, it could be analysis of your finances, or looking at the way that your MSP is operating, and comparing you against benchmarks. It could be processing emails that come in, measuring sentiment, listening to conversations on phone calls, and listening to see if there are different types of things that you might want to take advantage of, or understanding your customers, and the types of services that you could offer them that maybe they don't know about. So really, the sky's the limit. MSPs are a really interesting company in that there are many different aspects of them that are amenable to this highly technical field, with a lot of knowledge that's required in order to do a good job. And often MSPs are operating under tight time constraints as well. It's not like you can go off and research something for 6 months when your customers is having an operational issue. So really using it's basically knowledge automation. Anything that you can imagine that requires some intelligence, which in an MSP is just about everything, you can apply these models and these tools to do that. And really, I kind of go back to the beginning of the conversation, where I think it was Matt was saying that he's a reluctant programmer, and programming is kind of something that's very draining. It can be, especially when you're doing the minutia. And a lot of different tasks are like this. When you can automate those things, it just kind of makes everyone more creative. You open up space for them to be creative and not to just be kind of. I think at one of the companies that I worked with in the past, I think they had someone who was sitting there for 8 or 10 hours a day just classifying service tickets that came in. They were just saying, "Oh, here's the board that it goes on, and here's the category," and that is mind-numbing work. And that's something that a language model could just take off your hands right away. Literally the simplest thing you could possibly do, and free up an entire person to do more creative things.
I'm glad you brought up that example. I'm curious. So you're investing in this space. You're in a cutting edge area. You're at a time when this technology's been around for some years, but the cost and the effectiveness and like everything's coming together at a point where we're creating value now, right? And applying this into the service provider space. So triage, got it. Like categorizing tickets. That sounds like a great application, and I don't think anyone likes that job. So if we presume for a second that the person that's mind-numbingly triaging tickets is now freed up to learn a specific like knowledge area, right? And we can direct those issues towards those places. What other things? What other things can we use? What other things can MSPs expect? Let's say 2024. Like what by the end of the year? What's reasonable for them to call up you guys and say, "Can you help me with?" Is it researching like the world of technical knowledge, rather than going out on Stack Exchange or whatever? Is that in scope?
Yeah, for sure. So the things that we do we have an extension that's inside of ConnectWise, and maybe this gives you a little bit of some insight into how we think about kind of the table stakes, the things that every MSP should get for free. When you open a ticket, you want it to be summarized. You don't want to go to the bottom of the ticket and have to read the entire thing and follow the conversation and the ins and outs of how things changed over time. You have an AI that can just read it and summarize it, tell you what the current state of the ticket is.
So normalizing the current state of that ticket, right?
Yeah.
To make it quick to understand
Right.
and consistent, right?
Yeah.
That sounds really important, particularly when so many service providers struggle with that operational effectiveness because of that lack of normalization, right?
We had a business owner who told me that he wants to kind of get an overall feel for what's happening in his business by going through the tickets and looking at them and trying to just kind of get some insight into that. And he said it would be extremely difficult before. He would have to go and read all the tickets and try to understand them. Now he kind of just clicks through them and reads the summaries and kind of uses his mind to find patterns in a lot less information. So that was really interesting to hear him say that.
What about like automatically created tickets that come from alert systems and stuff like those? That's another mind-numbing triage task.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Alerts that come out of those systems are indecipherable sometimes.
Yeah, it can find the small bit in the noise and say, okay, this is a storage issue and this needs to be, responded to pretty quickly. We also provide, kind of advice for what to do next. Usually there's a task that you can do to move the ticket forward, and that's something that we can give you really quickly. So as soon as you pull the ticket up, every single time we give you a suggested title for the ticket, we categorize the ticket, give you a summary, and then we give you advice and a suggested response back to your customer. All those things are just kind of table stakes, but it's the kind of thing that can save you a lot of time and actually take a lot of the burden off of your work. So the next phase up from there, since we're talking about what's coming next, the next phase up from there is to actually have a back and forth discussion, like, have we ever seen this issue before? Yeah, you've seen it these many times. Is there a pattern? How did we solve it in the past? And it can
Yeah.
tell you how it solved it. What do you suggest I should do? It comes back with a suggestion. How
I
do I do
imagine I imagine even as simple as your point of like, this particular business owner says, I like to look at the tickets to determine what's going on in the business. I imagine you'll be able to just be like, hey, summarize what's going on in the business by looking at the tickets.
we have that, so
Yeah.
that's kind of what we have. That's our offering that actually pulls in tickets and kind of cognitively can categorize them. So you basically say, hey, what's coming overnight? It'll give
Yeah.
you a nice summary, and you just say, hey, read the tickets and tell me if there's anything I need to be aware of, and it'll just read all the tickets and apply that knowledge.
So I have, I don't know if this is a wish list item for the world, but
I'm writing it down.
Yeah,
If-
that's right.
so as at least three of us on this call, we speak geek, right? And Bianca's learning it. Zach's learning
Did
it
I
too, but
graduate?
I think you graduated, Zach.
Sorry.
You've been
No.
steeped in geek, like
It's too late for you now.
Well, if you go back to the first one of these that I'm on, I was not graduated there.
all right. So
I'm glad.
I think you have. So I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I don't.
I'd say I'm wearing it as a badge
That's
of
great.
honor.
Okay.
It's a great
Yeah.
thing.
So we speak geek. Bianca, maybe I don't want to presume things, but let's just say for this case that she doesn't speak geek. If she's putting in a ticket and she has no interest in speaking geek, right? And the geeks have no interest in speaking human. Is that an area of potential application?
Well, I mean, yeah. So you can ask our model to describe something, and you can say, hey, make it simpler. So here's every morning I like to come in and chat with our model to see where it is. They have personalities. We've seen, it's just a fascinating process building language models, just as an aside. But I come in the morning, I put myself in the mindset of an MSP business owner, and I start asking questions. I say, okay, show me the tickets. Which one do you think looks important? It tells me. I say, okay, just summarize it for me. It summarizes it. And then I said, well, write me a response. And it wrote a response. And I said, you need to make that a little more succinct, not 6 paragraphs for the response to the customer. And then it came back. So that back and forth is where I think there's a lot of value. I don't think Bianca needs it, but if someone is reading a ticket and it's just too technical, you can say, well, can you, I don't understand that. Can you make it a little simpler for me?
Well, Zach, when you called up your MSP, was it like you just wanted to know when it was fixed, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I called up my MSP, it was like something was like
the
really
thing's broken.
Yeah,
The thing's broken. Can you fix it?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you think about the volume that many large MSPs get, it's a lot of tickets. It's a lot of things coming at them quickly. So there's a story for not just the engineers working there, but the customers too. Customers get much faster responses. They get responses that are often, basically customized.
Prioritization too.
Yeah. Kind of get a whole view of the hurricane of information that's coming in.
I'm excited, and I'm even more excited to talk to you like in another 8 or 10 months, because I know AI moves fast, right?
Yeah.
To just even hear what's coming next.
I'll tell you what's kind of on the horizon, since it's kind of fun to talk about just real quickly. So the next thing is these language models are all about kind of giving you an instant response. It's like if I went up to you, Matt, and I said, hey, write me a story about, robots, and you just immediately started speaking to me, and you tried to keep it into a nice context in a story. They're pretty good at it, but the next thing we want to do is to give them time to think, just
Really?
give them a task, and then go home and come back the next day, and you have your answer. Have them read all of your tickets and look at all the information across everything and just do the research for you. So I think that's really what we're going to start to see over the next year, is not these immediate responses, because kind of the amount of time that it takes to give a response is kind of it's related to the value of the response. We want to give the AIs a lot of time to think and organize and pull in a lot of details.
How does that scale from a resource perspective? Because it seems to me, just logically thinking, I have no technical training in this, so if I'm ignorant, then that's totally fine with me. But it seems to me like every moment that they continue thinking is like the entire use of processing, or am I?
No, you're right. But so there's something interesting about this technology that might not be intuitive, and that's that we use GPUs. Basically, video
Yeah.
gamers are responsible for all this. Um, so we use GPUs to answer the questions and to process inference, but they're really good at doing things in parallel. So really, if you send in 5, 10, 15, 20 requests at the same time, a lot of times the GPUs can answer in the same speed as if you just did one at a time. So it takes a lot of resources. It takes a big piece of expensive equipment, but you can really pack in a lot of requests at the same time. So if you had a lot of people that were doing, kind of background processing for a lot of research, like what I spoke to you about, the economic still workout. It's a really, really fascinating kind of advancement.
I mean,
Presumably, well, I'm just imagining that leads into models that think about the answer before you ask it, right?
Yeah, they
Or
just tell you
perhaps,
the answer when you come in. You don't even know the question.
or perhaps they call you on the phone and say like, "Hey, this thing's happening."
Yeah, we've talked about installing a breaker here where you got just turn off Alga. She's become self-aware.
so AI obviously has an asymptotal curve of its value. When it starts to consider and think over time, what is that? What does that look like?
Well, it looks like, people, kind of turning over some of what they do right now to machines to do it for them. I mean, it might be, in the very near future, we're, just getting kind of summaries and responses and information and personalized uh, things for us all the time. I often talk to people about how um, AI is about generating content for yourself. It's not necessarily about generating content for other people, right? So if you think of AI as something that you can use to write blogs and stuff, that's probably not something that's going to work for long, because everyone can write their own blogs with AI and they can have them be just specifically tailored to themselves. So the future really is about using AI to create content for ourselves. And that might be for an MSP. Hey, go out and read all these tickets and then give me a summary of how the business technology landscape is changing over time, which is kind of a difficult job for anyone to do. And the computer might do that overnight for you. For another person, it might be, hey, I like action movies and I like these different actors, and create this movie with this content, and it'll create it for us. And I don't think there's a world where someone's going to want to watch your movie. You created that for yourself. And right now, it's incredibly expensive. It's $100 million to make a movie, but in the future, these things that we can create for ourselves will be much less expensive. Going out and doing a lot of research, and it really means everything becomes a lot better in the future. We'll have machines that are thinking day and night about how to solve cancer, how to build, more efficient solar cells, how to do fusion. So giving these computers time to think and be creative is really the really near frontier.
So it's not so much the asymptotal value of them in the moment, but it's the value they create across the moments.
Yeah, over
Problem
time.
solving.
Yeah. I mean, right now, if you ask the model to give you the cure for cancer, it can't do it.
Yeah.
But maybe if we gave it 6 months to think about it, it could make a
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah. If it took that energy of focus straight through the, yeah. Now that's
Well,
that's amazing.
we just
Go ahead,
talked a
Matt.
bunch of specific use cases, but maybe we should get the real the pitch here. Robert, do you want to stand up on a stump and like give
Yes.
it like
Yeah, I've done a little bit of it.
Tell MSPs what they need to know about 9Minds.
Okay, so go to 9minds.com and click the download button. Actually, that's true. If you go to our website, we do not even ask for your email address if you click on the right place. And I'll leave that as an exercise to people. And you can just go and install our extension. If you use ConnectWise, we'll start to provide inference to you. We'll summarize your tickets, we'll give you advice, we'll give you responses and categorize and give you titles, and all these things are just free and there's no catch. It's just that you're going to see what we can do, and then later on you can upgrade if you want to actually have a lot of that knowledge to be put into play for your own service tickets and your own internal resources. And really, the sky's the limit. So every day we're thinking about how to apply all this technology to.
You got the technology thinking about it, I bet, over there.
We use technology to write the technology. We're thinking about it every day, and you just kind of get, you're along for the ride. As it gets better, everything is available to you. So.
Well, what's the biggest value prop for an MSP with 9Minds or utilizing 9Minds? Because I want to make sure you've had a really clear chance to stump the value.
Yeah, so if you have an engineer, they're well-trained professionals. We don't charge a lot. We charge, I think, $30 per month per engineer. We can save you $30 with the free version. That's what I was. I have a lot of these discussions about ROIs.
Yeah.
We'll do that for free. We can go way beyond that. We can save you a tremendous amount of time just
I
by
thought you were
being.
about to throw the trillion word out there.
Trillion. Yeah, we'll save you trillions of dollars.
We gotta get you up to the government.
So yeah, well, your engineers will have time to be more creative, and they'll glean all the information out of all the different various sources of information you have. And like I said, the cost is very low, and we don't really have to save you a whole lot of time to make it really interesting for you.
Awesome. Well, let's do a couple rounds of takeaways, Matt. Unless you have something else you want to toss in there.
I've got a really important takeaway, which is that pretty soon, like in the foreseeable, like less than a year away, like maybe before next spring, I'm gonna be in a world where AI talks to me of its own, on its own schedule, right? And it's not going to be trying to sell me like some Amazon product that I don't want. So it's gonna do something useful that I want it to do. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Bianca, you got one?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of businesses are already using AI for a multitude of reasons. One, because of time, and two, because it improves the overall quality of life of a lot of people, and it really just helps you delegate tasks that you'd otherwise be spending a lot of time on. So it just really allows you to be a better worker, I think.
Okay. Robert, do you want to take one takeaway, and then I'll do mine and lead us out?
Yeah, my takeaway would be that, start thinking about these technologies, start thinking about the value that you have in your MSP, in the data that you have, and how you can use tools like ours and others to increase the productivity of the people that work for you.
I think that's well said. My takeaway, and I'm going to prove my fluency in geek. The cat's name is, I'm going to disprove my fluency in geek here. The cat's name is Shmurda. And to prove my fluency in geek, I think the difference between it going from predictive to generative was really interesting to me. And I look forward to more in-depth conversations with you and Bianca and anybody else that wants to talk about AI things with me at work or in private, because what a tremendously fun topic. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you everybody else who joined us. Next week, we're welcoming our friend Richard on for a conversation about communicating risk to your business clients. There's a lot of new risk in the world these days, especially on the cyber front. And I know a lot of our MSP partners enjoy guidance on how to have those conversations with their clients and folks out there. So that's going to be a really valuable and exciting conversation. I know it's cheesy to say it, but it is super valuable to like us on LinkedIn and subscribe. It helps to show that people out there value what we have to say, and we do appreciate that. So if you haven't already, like us on LinkedIn, check out our educational content on YouTube, and be sure to join us next week. Thank you guys again, and everybody have a great weekend.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.